Hello YouTube and welcome to Heathen Hacks. As I've mentioned on my upgrade video, I'm going to sell my old GPU. But before I let it go, we're going to service it by deep cleaning it, replace the thermal pads, and repaste the thermal paste. Doing so will not only help keep it running cooler and extend its usage, but also make it look more appealing and potentially increase its resale value because it shows that we take good care of our devices. Let's go! These are the thermal pads that we'll be using. They have varying thickness ranging from 0.5mm, 1.0, 1.5, and 2.5mm. And of course, the Arctic MX6 thermal paste. I think that would pretty much cover everything. Before we begin, let's remove these protective covers, then get our magnetic parts tray and screwdriver. As you can see here, I have already changed its stock thermal pads before. I did it last March 2025 and was actually included on this video. The difference this time is that I'm going to include the process and do a much better job at it. Alright, let's start dismantling it by removing 7 screws located here, 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 here. 4 of these have springs on them, by the way. They fasten the part of the heatsink that is directly on top of the GPU die. Be sure to not lose any of them. Let's remove the I/O shield. It has a total of 7 screws located here, here, and these 5 right here. Removing the I/O shield would give us access to the 3 out of 4 screws that attaches the fan shroud to the heatsink. One of the 3 screws is located here while the other 2 are on the opposite side. We can only access the remaining screw after removing the back plate and the PCB like so. And there it is. Let's put these things away, then start disassembling the fan shroud to do some cleaning. These fans are being held by 3 screws located here, here, and here. After removing the screws, we have to disconnect the fan from the splitter cable which connects the fans to the PCB. Remember to take note of the orientation or order of the fans because not all of them spin at the same direction. After removing the last fan, it's time for some cleanup. And as you can see, it's really dusty, and one of the most effective ways of cleaning it gently is by using a small paintbrush. Next, let's clean up our workspace, then wipe down the fans using some wet wipes or a cleaning cloth with some alcohol. After cleaning the fans, let's move on to the fan shroud. Then, reassemble it. Remember to tighten it just right, else the plastic mount would break. And we're done. Continuing on, let's remove the thermal pads on the heatsink. Brush away the dust using a slightly bigger paintbrush. Clean up our workspace. Clean up the previous thermal pads residue using some cleaning cloth and isopropyl alcohol. Clean up the previous thermal paste, then follow it up by wiping it with dry cleaning tissue. The last step before adding new thermal pads and paste is cleaning the GPU's PCB. For this one, I'm going to use the previous method of cleaning with a paintbrush, cleaning cloth, isopropyl alcohol, and some Q-tips. For those who are curious, this is the thing I use as cleaning cloth. We're done cleaning the front side. Now let's clean the back side of the PCB as well by using the same procedure. Just make sure to clean it gently because there's a bajillion tiny ICs, transistors, resistors, and other components in here, and it only takes 1 or 2 of these tiny little things coming off to ruin your whole GPU. Before we proceed on replacing the thermal pads, we have to clean the backplate first. This side is facing the back side of the PCB. It doesn't have much dust or dirt on it, but it's also important to clean for the new thermal pads to stick to it reliably. Next up, each thermal pad thickness has their own designated place on the GPU, and since we already have information about where to place them, we only need to find out what dimensions we need before we proceed on cutting them to shape. The accuracy doesn't matter that much, but in general, it should be as long and as wide as the components that they would cover, because they would still spread out a bit when we put it back together due to compression. Here's my digital calipers, and before we start measuring, we have to set it to 0 first. As they say, measure twice, cut once. Here we measure the width of the currently attached backplate thermal pad and compare it to the supposed area that they need to help transfer heat from. This part has about 19mm in width, which checks out. Next, we have to measure the length. Okay, it says here that it's about 65mm in length. Next, to cut it to shape and somewhat straight, first, let's use the caliper to mark the size of the width onto the 2.5mm thermal pad by making an indentation. Then, let's use this transparent ruler to both measure and mark our cutting line like so. After that, let's mark the length by making another indentation and cutting line. Then, it's time to cut. Since this one has just about the same width as this remaining one right here, we can just cut off the excess at the bottom, then we can have the desired shape. Do the same thing to the last one, and there we have it. Now let's remove these old thermal pads while making marks for the new ones. Then clean up our workspace. Alright, let me just glove up. Oh, it ripped. So this one goes here, this one here, and this one here. And we're done with this part. Next up is the front. For this, we're going to cut up 4 long strips for this, and this. And 3 smaller ones for this, and this. Let's start with the 1.5mm one. Now, don't cut your thermal pads like this, by the way, because it can seriously damage something. I'm doing this really carefully with a fresh blade and just for marking. Alright, let's proceed on cutting. There we go. Let's do the same thing to the 1mm ones, except this time I'm going to just press it hard to make the marks instead of using a box cutter. Then use the ruler again to make the marks more visible. Double check the size, then proceed on cutting. It's slowly coming together. Just need 4 more strips and we're golden. Okay, let's get another 1mm strip and cut it to shape. Do the same thing for the remaining spots. For these guys, we're going to use the 0.5mm ones. Since these ICs basically have the same width, we can just cut up 1 long strip of it, then cut them to length. Just like that. Next, let's apply the thermal pads carefully and gently one by one. Let's attach the backplate. Line it up properly, then press the side where the thermal pads are located. Doing so would make the backplate stick to the back of the PCB due to the thermal pads. After that, let's add some screws to fasten the backplate to the PCB. Thermal paste has been added and the thermal pads have been peeled. Next up is to attach the heatsink. Make sure to line it up properly as well. Then let's add the other screws. Apologies for the missing footage. I honestly did not notice that my camera stopped recording because the SD card ran out of space. But anyway, here it is fully reassembled. Wait a minute, that's not right. This fan should be here and this one here. Right, I'll be back later. And that's pretty much it. It doesn't need any technical know-how to do this on your own GPU. You basically just need to remember where each screw goes and how to disassemble and reassemble it. I think the hardest part is finding out what size or thickness of thermal pads to use, because they vary in size depending on the model or brand. After all this, the only thing left to do is do some benchmarks and probably find some buyers. Thanks for watching and see you again next week. Maybe.